Perfect. Let me start admitting everyone.
Okay, well, we're at 5:01, so we're going to get started and welcome our employer guest, Sandra Best-Bunny, Associate Director of Student Support and Alumni Networks at the School of Social Work, and in partnership with Stephanie Nunley from the Career Education Center, we are able to have our guest here today, which is Amy Cipher from Justice Resource Institute, otherwise known as in community in Massachusetts as JRI. So I think many have already have been able to see a description of who JRI is, right? And so and have seen Amy's bio as well, I believe. So just to give just a quick background on why we do this is that we'd love to be able to hear about an employer beyond the roles that they may have open. We want to understand the culture, the day in the life, especially from a social work perspective, and the many in an institution like JRI, there's many ways that a day in the life may look for social workers. So that's what we're hoping to hear. And then, all of the other additive ideas of why JRI as these, you could have a mix of BSW, MSW students. In Massachusetts, you may have some from other states since we have an online and an on-ground program. So why JRI is really what we would love to hear the story of, and as well as hear your story and why JRI for you. So thank you for coming, Amy, and the floor is yours.
Yeah, I'm so excited to be seeing all of you and be a part of your journey to find your spot and your home in social work. I think like most folks, we kind of come in with the passion, into the field with the passion to help, and then realize that we have no idea what that means for us. And we're still just figuring it out. Even after, 17 years or so in the field, I still call myself a social worker squirrel. Like, oh, look over there. I want to help over there. Now I want to do this. How can I use all of these things at once? So that's kind of how I view my current role, and kind of my current work is just trying to find still, what I want to be when I grow up as a social worker here. I'll say that I found JRI after I was doing work for the state of Florida. In my work for the state, I was doing, kind of similar to the work that DCF does here in Massachusetts. But for me, that felt like a bit more reactionary than I would have preferred my professional life to be. What I really wanted was to be part of the prevention, and then with that solution focus. So that's when I found JRI, and I found people who had a similar goal about working towards preventative measures to support people, working towards guiding people towards success, and not really as reactionary towards their failures. Because for me, that was really an important part of the profession. I did not end up getting my MSW, which to this day I'm like, ooh, man, I wish I had done that part. So kudos to folks who are working on it. I think it's such a worthwhile component for your growth. I was at a different spot in my life as a single mom and figuring out what that meant for my career. So I went with things that made a little bit different sense at the time. But in terms of JRI, I'd say there are 3,000 reasons why JRI, as many as there are employees that we have. For everybody, I think it's really about the passion, the goals, and the mission at the core. I know that all of our leadership, all of our vice presidents, all of our CEO, our COO, they all started as ground level social workers, every single one of them. So I know that our corporate structure is built on people who have sat on the floor with somebody in crisis, who have managed that moment and know what that feels like. For me, that's a huge respect for each of the roles that you are now in charge of. that really provides a lot of common sense, practical guidance to the work every single day. And that's what keeps me motivated. I know that wherever you start in JRI is not where you finish. I'm in my 5th job at the agency over the 15 years. And that's really because I had an interest, I had an idea. We've started new programs, we've worked on different initiatives, and they're supported. We have the luxury of being a large organization, so we can support new things. We can take a chance on maybe a 2-woman program that's equine therapy. We can, take those opportunities with a little bit more openness than I feel like smaller places might not have that. So that's kind of, how I started, how I've gotten into the field. Now I do a lot of staff development, training, program development, bigger picture, macro stuff that kind of keeps things moving at the ground level. And I like that just as well as I did meeting with people in the community and going into their homes. Each of it has its own joy and pieces of the work. So I will talk forever if you let me. So if you have questions, just yell out.
Sure, and I'll guide a little bit, but I want the room to be able to make this a conversation since it's nice and small, and there's an opportunity to do that. But you could, if you would have available to you, the types of roles that are within the organization today, and maybe talk a little bit about some of that if you can, some of that onboarding
Absolutely.
work that happens, then a bit
So in
about
terms of roles, I would say they're so varied, even for folks with the same, even if you're walking out with an MSW and the person next to you also has that, the roles that are open are so dramatically different. We have a research department. So those are our folks who are working on cutting edge, evidence-based use of technology, data collection. They're working with the biostatisticians to figure out if what we're doing is working and how do we replicate those things. Those folks are really digging into the biases in the work, since a lot of our work is fairly subjective, seeing if outcomes are different for different populations, different groups, and then figuring out how to train for that, how to support that. I always find their job fairly interesting, and I'm always like trying to find a way in to see what they're doing on a regular basis. But that's just one version compared to, say, our outpatient therapists who are doing a more traditional clinic-based interventions, whether that be with youth or with couples or with individuals who are challenged by substance use. So there's definitely a lot of those different qualities in what we're looking for people. We have after school programs, so folks who are interested in more of that latency age development, that pre-teenage development is so critical towards how kids are able to cognitively function later. So we really take each of those roles as such a unique position. We have schools, which I tell people it's like a different flavor every school you go to. We have a school down in Middleborough called Anchor. And then compared to our school out in Acton, the Victor School, they're all so completely different. So one focuses more on vocational attainment, and they, have clinical support there that are really focused on what we're seeing are multi-generational impacts of not having access to quality education. So a lot of that clinical support goes into making sure that education is accessible. Compared to our Victor campus, which is a more creative but traditional curriculum with the support for the clinicians, we have a lot of GLBTQ youth that are going to our Victor school. And we work on advocacy skills. We work on, teaching young people how to say what they need to say in spaces that are going to help them grow. So I would say there are clinicians as parts of all of those things. And we're always looking to make our teams bigger, because the bigger our teams are, the more people we can serve. So there is a very rare occasion where like, nope, we have too many. We're always looking to grow those pieces of it. There are 2 other programs that I want to highlight just because they're so cool and so unique. Of course, we have IHT, and those are some of the most creative positions because you have to be creative. I have been in that session sitting with people supporting that role, and you may have 5 people with 5 different experiences in a family that you're working on navigating. But we also have programming in Boston that's the My Life, My Choice program. I don't know if folks have heard of that one. It's really about preventing sexual exploitation when we can, and then supporting post-interaction with exploitation and human trafficking. Really cool program for people who want to balance that advocacy with that clinical component, because it's so important that we connect with our community leadership across the state about, what else can we be doing to look for signs, support people, and help families after things like that happen. I'd say really across the whole state. We also have programming in Connecticut. So if folks are looking at those things too. Our Connecticut programming is very similar to Massachusetts. The rules are very similar as well in how it's delivered. We have, a residential school down there for latency through adolescence. And then we have clinics and community-based programs too. We kind of modeled those. Connecticut didn't have as strong a community-based intervention as Massachusetts did for a lot of years. So we had developed some pretty strong services down there. And now thankfully it's taking off in all different areas of the state. So I think that families are definitely benefiting.
Very good. You read my mind. I was going to ask you about geography and where you were located. And it's under the same umbrella of JRI in Connecticut as well.
Yep, exactly. I mean, in terms of New England area, so we have some programming that touches Rhode Island. We're able to see some folks down there. Connecticut is definitely a bigger program. And we have services that reach out all the way to the islands, all the way out, way in Western Mass to the borders. It's 100 different programs and very few are, co-located. So you may have 2 in a spot. We're just kind of, keeping a touch on each of the communities we're serving in different ways.
Great, great. So to the audience, please, this is your time. You were interested in finding out more about JRI. Please feel free either to put it in the chat or just to come right on. And if you can't put your video on, just to speak up and inquire about what more you would want to know.
Hi, Amy. My name is Sarah. I am curious about, I really love JRI's mission. And I'm really curious to hear more about how an outpatient therapist role might be different at JRI than in other typical outpatient therapy settings.
Absolutely. So, in my work, I come across a lot of people, and a lot of my friends over the years are also working out in the field. I think it comes down to support. Being an outpatient therapist can feel like an island. You can feel like you are responsible for 40, 50 patients, and that's a lot to carry. In terms of the agency support, you're not only getting your support from your supervisor, from your director, from group supervision, which we prioritize because that peer-to-peer sharing is so valuable. You're also getting agency-wide supervision. So I sit on a team that every Wednesday we gather for the whole day, and people can bring in cases across the agency that they just feel stuck, that they just want some support. So we have a multidisciplinary team, about 15 of us, all different specialties, all different backgrounds, and we just brainstorm. We just talk about what's challenging, and what next steps that people can try to get out of that position. So it's not this feeling of just do it on your own and figure it out. It's a lot of, all right, let's talk about something you may not be familiar with. Maybe you haven't used mentalization-based therapy before, but somebody thinks, let's try this out. It's a lot more support than I feel like in the field exists, because especially with outpatient therapy, it's so individual that sometimes that reflects and feels isolating.
That's great to hear the number of programs, the breadth of programs, to hear the multiple types of supervision, and also the emphasis around the multidisciplinary. So who are the other players? Since we always want to make sure we're hearing that social work is not an island of itself, right? So
absolutely,
some of the other disciplines that are
absolutely. So we have educational specialists who really navigate special education. That's their whole brain. They're able to pick through the IEPs, the 504s, and how to coach parents. So they give you tools to do that. We have an occupational therapist who will actually do sensory profiles, evaluations, Allen cognitive functional assessments for older teens and adults, if you're struggling with that. We also have our psychiatric nurse practitioner and our medical director who pop in for things that just feel like they have this medical need that we can't quite put our finger on, because that definitely happens. We have a lot of, I'd say there's at least 3 now substance use specialists who focus on adolescents and then adult versions of care and support, since those are so complicated and involve so many layers of confidentiality and how you involve people. And then we really bring in a whole different group of LMFTs, LMHCs, LIs, with backgrounds that may be about psychosis, that's their specialty. We have some nonverbal development specialists who focus on that pre-verbal trauma and how to manage that through play therapy. So as you can imagine, with 3,000 staff as an agency, we have a lot of resources to pull together when people feel like they need more support. And I think more importantly, it's not like a frowned upon thing, because we do it every week. So it's not like you failed at your position. It's actually a success, because you're like, I need some expertise. I don't know everything. And we all sit around the table and we say, I don't know everything. Let's ask so-and-so. So it really provides a culture that feels very open, as opposed to maybe a culture that if you ask for help, you might not feel as respected.
Very good. Others, because I can keep asking questions too. So others, please chime in.
Yeah, I had a question, Amy. Oh, sorry, Kat, did you want to go? Okay. I know that JRA is really well known for its kind of trauma education, and I'm wondering how that makes its way kind of down to the curriculum and training.
It does. So I'm actually on our training task force and committee. So I do all of our CEU applications and all of that stuff. So I get to see the cool stuff that's happening, which is a really good question, because the other component is you're entering this professional field. You want to stay up to date. You want to stay active in the field. You don't just read the books once and then we all know they're revising those books and those suggestions every year. So we're offering trainings every single month, and it's just part of your workday. So if you see a training in, say, ARC or advanced ARC, because maybe you already did that, or ARC and trauma-informed yoga, or substance use practice for our teenagers, all of those things are happening in our agency. All the things that we offer externally happen for all staff at all times. And you're able to just sign up, and that's going to be how you spend 4 or 5 hours of your work week that particular week. And then you'll get CEUs to balance out, because you're growing in the field, you're adding to that information. Also, when people start, we really don't just throw you to the wolves. It's a scary thing to start in an organization. It's a scary thing to, you've been working on these skills for years in school, and now it's like, here, go use them. That's definitely not how we operate. You do a lot of shadowing. You do a lot of training. So we have a week-long training, which is 5 days of really getting to know the mission and the goals, but through the lens of your work. So you'd be doing a wraparound training, you'd be doing a special education training, substance use, cultural competency and how to guide that process, clinical practice. There's so many trainings that week. It's definitely also a blend. So we want to make sure that you're not super bored. You're doing a lot of interaction and working with your colleagues, because part of I'd say one of the best parts of training is getting to see the other people who are doing the work with you and sharing that experience together, so you can bring different things to the table. For us, that's really valuable. I think that the more you're able to share what you know, then the more other people will share what they do, and you're going to just mutually learn from one another.
Thank you.
Hi. I don't know if you talked about this. I came in a little bit late, but I was wondering if you had more information about like your referral process. Are you working directly with like state agencies, or is it a private agency? I just want to kind of get an idea of where individuals we're servicing would be coming from.
Absolutely. So of the 106 programs, they all have some different feel to how people end up working with our service providers. I will say most of them are voluntary, which puts a different spin on how you're able to really support people. We do have a couple of programs that are, I would say, voluntold. They're more DYS based. But even then, we look at that through the lens of recovery and rehabilitation more than, I would say, years past when that was more like, here's your punishment, meet with this person. We've been able to develop that really nicely. But referral sources come from everywhere, from the Department of Mental Health, DCF, state entities for DDS, and insurance partners, school districts, and self-referrals. I would say a big chunk of the work we're doing are families, friends, neighbors, somebody reaching out, not knowing where to go, and really finding that support. A couple of years ago, we actually created a brand new position called our navigator. And she's kind of our Jill of all trades, where if you have no idea what you need, you just call her and she talks it through with folks. And that happens all the time where people do that. And sometimes we may not have what they're looking for in the town we have, and she finds it. It's just part of the culture that we have that's like, you need something, let's find a way to do that. Even if it's not us, even if it's with somebody else, but we know you're being taken care of.
Trying to unmute. Sorry. Thank you very much.
Yeah, great questions. Keep them coming.
Yeah, that's right. Others. You talked a little bit about culture broadly, but so what would you say for that new hire? What's that learning curve and time frame that you typically see for folks to really, that you know that they're retained, that they're feeling comfortable, that they're staying on, and that they're going to take the journey with JRI for a little bit?
Yeah, I think, after 3 months, you get to see what your day will really look like. And I think those are good opportunities. We review, you're in supervision every week with your supervisors, but we do a really good career assessment for you. We use a tool to really make sure that you're talking not just about your short term, but your long-term future goals, and how even from the beginning, we're figuring out ways to support you and addressing challenges. Because you know what, maybe you did that training 2 weeks in, and now you're feeling like, man, I wish I've been in the field a little more now. Now I wish I could look at from a new perspective. So you may want to go back to some things. All of those are open. It's a fluid process, and we definitely take that as individual as we can. But I'd say about 3 months, you've really gotten your feet wet and you've kind of figured out, is this for me? And there are moments it's not for you, but the luxury, again, of starting with an agency that has space for that, to be able to say, this isn't for me, but I saw at the other part of the agency, this looks really cool. That's something we're very supportive of. We find that people, when you start in a place that culture is about you as a person too, and you feel like you can have those conversations without it's like a betrayal, oh my gosh, I'm gonna get fired, then you're able to find your next move. So maybe you, instead of working outpatient, you really love your latency clients. So you really want to work at the after school program. We figure out how to do that. And part of my job in my division is to help people do that. So I do a lot of checking in with people. What are your needs looking like? Are you feeling like this is a match for you? Because, if you're not going to be content in the position or feel competent, then you're definitely not going to want to stay in that position. And sometimes it feels overwhelming to say those things, but when you have somebody checking in with you, it feels like, oh, all right, I'm supposed to say these things.
Right, that's right, that's right. And so what goes hand in hand with that is that I'm hearing that there's a career path potential for many, and you're one of those. And you said your leadership was one of those as well, for those who get beyond that 90 and year and whatever time frame that is, to really get
we have a lot of structure for that too. So it's not just like willy-nilly applying for things that pop up. We have groups. So when you're ready to grow, you can join our futures group. You can join our supervisors preparation group. We have leadership groups where mentors in the agency start those connections with you. We also, for folks who maybe not feeling as competent in the group setting, we have individual mentorship with our vice presidents to staff to figure out, like, this is my strength. How can I use it better? And we tend to do a lot of that individual pairing and connection, so that you don't feel like you have to make all of these hard choices, without a lot of support and information.
That's great. Good. Like to start early with that thinking, right?
Absolutely. And there's other layers of that. So some people might not want to be supervisors.
Right.
Some people don't feel that connection to that. So we also have a lot of committees and groups. I'm on, I can't even tell you how many committees for things. Again, that social work squirrel, I'm just all over the place. So there's committees that are working on diversity and inclusive hiring practices, or diverse and inclusive functionalities for our programs. We also have groups that work on quality management, because that just might be a secret skill that you're hiding in terms of assessing quality management skills. And they're open to everybody to pop into. We do a lot of, committees to work on a specific goal and then figure out how to make those changes. So we're not just going to talk the talk around the table for a year. We're going to walk the walk and see what happens.
Mhm. Perfect. Please pipe in questions. Don't be shy, Robert.
I have a couple more questions, but I
for it.
already asked, so okay, I know. I also want other people to ask if they have questions. Anyways, in this field, like potentially like high levels of burnout and turnover, just from our work, and just wondering how JRA kind of supports its staff to, make people feel comfortable and successful in their work.
Absolutely. That is huge. It is a huge problem. I think that starts, and this is going to sound, it's just more human based. Benefits. When you feel like you're getting your basic human needs met, you can definitely work with a different level of intensity. Time off, not just in a bank somewhere, like actual time off. I have very often heard that people said like, oh, I wasn't planning to go on vacation, but my supervisor suggested I take my time off. And that's what we do. It's about balancing yourself out with the work. If you can't feel refreshed enough to be yourself, you're not going to do your best work. I really think the supervision is an important deal too. We use a trauma-informed supervision method because of the vicarious trauma of the work. It's really important that you're able to feel like your supervisor is not just going to talk to you about your productivity, but also your experience in the moment of working with the hard moments you're dealing with. I think those things all really add up. Also, I'll say, paying for my kids' medical insurance, these basic things that you're like, oh my gosh, once you see that you have all of those supports and the benefits are strong, you're not as worried about those pieces. And you can really focus on the work because your humanness is being cared for in a different way. So it definitely helps. The training helps. That time off really structures. I'm up to, I think, 6 weeks of time off now. And I'm like, I don't even know when I'm going to use all that. But it's important that those things are there for you. The flexibility in the work, even before the pandemic, we had really done a great job at giving people the technology they needed to work remotely. If you're seeing a few clients in the community, or if you're out all day, there's no point to be in an office at the end of the day. That's just going to make your day worse. That's just going to make it more stressful. We're very flexible about that. We're also good about flexing time, because there may be a time when you want to get a certificate in some sort of leadership, or you may want to get, go back for something in school and you need that flexibility. Those are really big pieces of things that we do for staff, because you're going to be bringing something to the work that's unique when you're doing those things. It's good for everybody. It's good for you as a person to grow, and it's good for the work that you're going to be able to do with individuals after. So we have a lot of people that kind of take different days off. I think for the first probably 4 years of my oldest son's life, I'd never worked on a Wednesday. I always worked on a Saturday. Just those little things that are very important when they're very important and you need them.
Thanks, Amy.
Thank you.
Oh, I'm sorry. I just wanted to ask one more quick question, and I apologize, I'm going to have to run for my kids. Are there part-time positions that regularly offered?
Absolutely. So a lot of folks may be, say you're dabbling and working or still working on your career. or maybe you have a job that's, school-based or the hours are different otherwise. We do a lot of part-time work to just keep people involved in the field that may not have the 40 hours to give to that, but maybe you can do 20 hours of outpatient work or 20 hours at one of the schools or one of the, after school programs, or so many different spots. And for us, that's just really about meeting people where they're at. We say that all the time for our clients, but we have to do that for staff too. And not every year are you able to do the same things, for sure.
That's a good question. So I'm hearing the work life, I'm hearing the balance, I'm hearing the human side of things, right? Which is the key to having people want to. Thank you for coming, Sarah, for having people want to join the organization. I like this. Others, please ask your question. This is an opportunity. Captive, a person from the organization outside of a job fair and the hustle and bustle of that, please feel free to ask. Anything else that you might want to, what are the other considerations? Benefits, we heard a few of those, but others, jump in.
So I had a quick question. I actually have two, and one's to piggyback off of a question that Robert had asked. How diverse is your staff in working with a diverse population? I'm sorry for my background. I'm still at work. So how diverse is your staff in working with a diverse population? Does your staff represent the population that you're working with in the unique areas and being able to provide the needs for the community? And then the second part, as far as what Robert was asking that I wanted to piggyback off of, in providing support for staff, what does that look like when there is a major crisis that is impacting everyone nationally? How do you provide the support for the staff as they are trying to provide support for the community? Easy one to think of is, the COVID pandemic, George Floyd, all of those many things that impacted the community and society as a whole. We as workers are still working. How does JRI support their workers while they're trying to support the community as well?
Great questions. I'll answer the diversity one in that it's never diverse enough. That is absolutely a fact. I think that there are so many barriers of entry socioeconomically for individuals to get higher education, even in a place like Massachusetts that so values higher education. So we will always be striving to better balance that out. That is a goal of ours. And I also think it's something that we acknowledge and really actually work on significantly. We have a lot of different things that we're doing in terms of recruitment at completely different places than we've recruited before, opening up more opportunities to apply online that's broad, that's open, that's not based on knowing so-and-so that you have to now apply. The same we've done for our internships is really open that up so we can work with institutions across the state of varying kind of interests and fields, because that's where you're going to meet people who have the experience to bring something unique to the table. So that's forever a goal of ours. And I think that part of that also comes with recruiting and retaining individuals people of color, people of, varying abilities, people of different fields to be in leadership roles too, because when you're able to bring that perspective to the table, it's so important. So, I definitely think we're not there yet, but we kind of own that, and we're definitely working on that piece of it. And part of that happens through our educational support. So we give every full-time employee, no matter their status in terms of what their role is, $4,000 to use towards schooling of any kind. We also let people flex their schedules so that those barriers are reduced. So we may have an amazing staff person who's been working on a residential floor and just didn't know how to get back to school. We can coach them through that. We have the staffing to do that. We have the resources to do that. So You know, they may be going in an MSW program and then coming out the other side with different skills, but that same great lived experience. So definitely through those educational components, it has helped us really kind of grow staff in ways that they may not have been able to do otherwise. In terms of support for what we all have been experiencing for years now, but really highlighted in these last 3 years of turmoil, and, you know, add COVID in there and it's been chaos at sometimes. I think really what the agency has done is hear people. So when people needed to go protest, you take PTO. You can say that out loud. I need to be a part of this social movement. I need to be out there. And there were times when our CEO was out there and we see him, like, he had strong feelings about so many things over the last few years that there was no reason for him to hold back, because the culture of the agency was about using those passions. For myself, I work on the Mass Now Commission for Menstruation Equality. In my side world, in my actual personal world, I'm able to bring that to work. I'm able to say, hey, I think we should be doing more. I think here's what we should be doing about menstrual products for our homeless populations. Here's what we should be doing. And there's a listen, there's a respect, all right, what can we do? And I know that's happening for causes that run the gamut, from racial equity to menstruation to rights of GLBTQ youth or adults. And the support is there, even if as an agency, there's nothing we can do except sign on to a bill and say, yes, we support this. They take those steps to acknowledge what staff are feeling and needing. So I hope that answers some of that. It's definitely complex when you're in the helping field and you're also simultaneously needing support. There are times where we have a team of people, we call them our first responders, but they're psychological aid first responders. And the program may be having a crisis. There are times where some of our staff, say in Taunton, are experiencing something very different than our staff in Holyoke. They may need more support. We've had programs who lose individuals by suicide, and we need to send the team out. Our first responders, they go out, they meet with the staff, they do the psychological first aid, they do coping groups, and they figure out, how can you keep doing this work that's safe for you as a person? But here's what you have just heard, or experiences what you've just experienced, and still needs to move forward.
Thank you very much.
That was a great question, Sherry. And I also encourage everyone to take a look, right, at websites. Go and dig deep. Look at who the leadership is. Not that presence exclusively means that there's the equity, but you still want to get a good glance. Go to the board. What does it look like? As you're starting to explore, is this the right organization for me? Is it going to align with, hopefully, your values? And it really comes down to your values at the end of the day when you select an organization. But you can do your homework that way as well. And that's why we enjoy doing this, to get a sense of how it's the story is told, right? With how the story is told. And it's
and I encourage you to reach out. I always say their email addresses are on the website for a reason. Don't hesitate. If there's somebody that you have a question or you're curious about their position on things, as social workers, we're all chatters by nature. So there's a lot of openness to have those conversations. And I think that you'll find that people are pretty responsive. So definitely do that digging in. For sure.
Yep, the curiosity is great. I see someone with Robert who I know there's a question, so you go for it and introduce yourself.
Hi, yeah, thank you, Sandra. My name's Gwen. I have two questions that are somewhat related. Robert filled me in a little bit about I'm sorry, I joined late. I was coming from elsewhere, but about the different departments within JRI. And one question is about how, as an organization, how siloed or integrated those departments are, and then connected but somewhat separately is a question about, you mentioned hiring people from different fields, and I'm curious about what an interdisciplinary team looks like and how spaces are facilitated to facilitate integration of different fields and people in different roles.
Absolutely. So because we are not generally co-located, I think there are a few different spots in that. Boston, we're co-located. There's like 4 programs because of space. It's Boston. There's less space to be had. But a lot of our programs are kind of 1 or 2 at a site. So you may be seeing, our Taunton site has our early childhood education program, which is like a grant-based program that supports childhood centers and training. They're sharing us an office space with in-home therapists. They're sharing with TMs. They're working with outpatient therapists in that building. So it's so easy when you're together to do that. The trick is there's over 100 of us. So you're not going to see everybody, but you will hear about it all. We have a huge tech push to integrate all the information. So you might see that, oh, hey, that group home that's 3 towns over is offering a training on this material that I'm really interested in. That's accessible for everybody in the agency. We also do a lot of kind of agency meet and greets and encourage people to visit sites of interest to them. You may be working with 2 teenage clients and you want to know more about the high school that we have, 3 or 4 towns over. Those site visits are not only valuable for you as a person who's working with somebody, but valuable as an employee to see what else is happening in the agency. A lot of times, those shared trainings, I was saying before that sometimes the best time of a training is really getting to see everybody, because you get to see what other programs are doing, what other positions are doing. So you may be in a training with a family partner and maybe you've never worked with one before. And now you get to see what their perspective is on the same material that you are getting. So shared spaces like that definitely help keep the agency cohesive and moving towards the same direction. Part of my job too is to facilitate those things. And we have different folks in the entire agency that I collaborate with to keep people connected. Our Wednesday meeting of stuck cases is another way that you really get to hear, this is how they would handle this if this kid was in a group home level of care. How can I implement that in a different way for the family? Or for you to share, hey, you know what, this is what I would have done in a model of more, art therapy based, and really provide that intervention. Those moments that everybody can access and be a part of really create that shared vision of work for sure.
Thank you.
So I know that we usually say, about 10 minutes to the hour that we wrap, only for the purposes of, we have 6 o'clock classes for some. And so we just want to give everybody that little moment, that transition moment. But if there's any last burning question, I know, Amy, we've had you on the on the fire throughout, but if anyone has a last burning question, do not be shy. Please use this as your moment to ask it.
And if you have it after the fact, feel free to email me. You can find me on the website. As you can tell, I don't hesitate to chat it up with people. So you can always reach out. Oftentimes I'll meet people at community events or something and I'll hand them some information, but it's not till they go back and they're like, oh, I didn't know that was one of your programs. Now I really want to know more about that specific program. That then we're able to talk it through in more of a context of what you're looking for and what your interests are. Overall, I will tell you, it's been over 15 years now and I'm not going anywhere. It definitely is a good place to work, to be a person, to feel like you're doing meaningful work while also being respected for that energy. And I know that when I'm working every day, that there are 3,000 other people who are headed in that direction with me, and who are, just kind of sharing that passion for helping.
Okay, very good, very good. I guess I will throw it out. I think Robert had a question and he should ask it, but I guess I should just say, is there a competitive, and I don't know that this is his question, but I'll just say, is there competitive compensation for an incoming new graduate coming into this org?
There definitely is. And I think it's really, for us being so big, it's dependent to, like, you may be able to make more money at one of our residential schools than you would an after school program. And that's just being honest because of what they pay us to give out. And I think you'll all find this over the course of time. It's also about, what time you can give to things. Outpatient therapists who are very efficient, who want to take on different amounts of people, you're able to bring in more money for sure. I will say too that we've been really advocating at the state level, going physically to the state house, our leadership, to meet with people about compensation, because we want to be able to keep paying and keep moving those salary rates higher and higher. And in order to do that, we need the state to be compensating fairly. So we're always fighting the fight to make sure that those things are fair and equitable. And I will tell you too that a big chunk of what you're getting comes in the form of benefits. We have like the last standing pension for any nonprofit in the state.
You do have a pension, okay.
And we just keep fighting to keep it, because it's just one of those pieces of compensation that you don't know how valuable it is until you need it.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. Robert, go for it.
Yeah, I just had a quick logistical question. Wondering, like, geographically where most of the programs are located, if there are some that are in and around Boston, which ones those are, and just looking
Absolutely.
where I want to work. Yeah.
So in Boston specifically, we have My Life, My Choice, our GLASS program, which is our GLBTQ youth, transitional age, and young adult programming. We also have JRI Health, which really focuses on supporting individuals who have been discriminated against because of HIV status and AIDS. Maybe that's housing discrimination, employment discrimination. They're kind of our like legal brain and mixed in with case manager clinical brain. So it's a neat team, the JRI Health team. We also have our gang involved youth programming with our Boston community-based programs. And then our more traditional, clinical ICC, intensive care coordinator roles, and our clinical IHTs. So that's kind of a good combination in Boston. We also have our Bay Cove program out in Brookline, which is a therapeutic day school for adolescents. Completely different field than our programs outside of the city, of course. Most of our programs outside of those are outside of the city with fair intention. A lot of programs that when you're serving young adults, it's nice to not always be on a direct bus line, because when you're having like a group home or a residential or a DYS programming, it reduces the amount of fleeing when you're in those particular settings. And it provides like a comfort of quiet and some peace that we've really found that a lot of kids benefit from that experience as they're kind of healing. So a little bit of everywhere, but definitely a lot of programming in Boston to consider and look at. And outside of the city too, we have some programs in Lynn. So if you're a North Shore kind of person, then we have a clinic there that does a collaboration of community service agency with like outpatient and all mixed in.
Very good. Very good. Okay.
Question? I see you have a question.
You all have the intuition of thunder. Just quick one. Are there any positions that are fully remote?
We don't have any that are fully remote. We gambled with that during the COVID times, and we found that the populations we're serving are not as responsive. For teenagers especially, it was hit or miss. Some of them started finally opening up, and some of them, we never saw for the 6 months that we had to do it because COVID was so active. But we found that there's a component of learning about somebody that we couldn't, replicate virtually. Sometimes you're seeing an individual and maybe their hygiene isn't great, but you can't quite tell. And maybe that's their telltale sign that their depression is kicking back in. So we have a very small group of individuals that we serve entirely remote.
That's great. That's great. Well, thank you again, Amy, for being here with us. Thank you to everyone who's attended and stayed on. I appreciate it. Stephanie, as always, partner in this whole effort. And please reach out. You have a name and a contact. Just say, we saw you at Simmons in the employer chat. And, you know, curiosity. Just keep that going and reach out to the team from the website as you get their contact info there. That's fair
Excellent.
enough.
Thank you. Thanks,
Thank
everybody.
you so much. We hope to see you back again.
Thank
Absolutely.
you. We'll see you at the fair because I know we'll see you.
Absolutely.
We'll be
I'll
there.
be there. Great. Have a
Excellent.
great one, everyone.
Excellent.
Have a great night.
Have a good classes. Take care.